A woman stands at the doorway of her home. Her husband has just died. She is young. She has no sons yet, no grown children. What happens to her now? The answer depends entirely on where she was born and when. But across nearly every culture that has ever existed, there is a pattern, and it is not kind. This is the half of history nobody bothered to write down. Culture 1, India. A custom that lasted nearly 2,000 years. Its name was Sati. When a Hindu husband died, his body was placed on a wooden funeral pyre, as tradition required. But in some Hindu communities, across many centuries, his widow was placed on the pyre too. In 1823, in the Indian state of Bengal alone, 575 widows died this way. In a single year, across all of British recorded India, over 15 years, more than 8,000 documented cases, and almost certainly many more that were never recorded. Sometimes the widow chose this. Often, she did not. Some were coerced by family members. Some were given drugs to silence their resistance. Why would families pressure their own daughters into this? Property. When a widow died, all her possessions devolved to her husband's family, not her own. A widow who lived was expensive. She required food, shelter, care. A widow who died settled the family's accounts. Sati was not always about religion. Sometimes it was about money. In 1829, under pressure from Indian reformers, the British colonial government outlawed Sati, but outlawing it did not end it. Sporadic cases continued throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. In 1987, an 18-year-old widow named Rup Kanwar died this way in the state of Rajasthan, in front of a crowd of 4,000 people, within the lifetime of most people watching this video. That same year, India passed the Sati Prevention Act, making not only the act, but also any glorification of it a criminal offense. But across India, you can still find small stone markers commemorating these deaths, some of them centuries old. At one fort in Rajasthan, Junagadh Fort, the handprints of widows who died this way are pressed into the walls. Each handprint, a different woman. Their names are mostly lost, but their hands remain, pressed into the stone. Culture 2, Ancient Greece. A very different kind of erasure. In classical Athens, widows did not have an independent legal category. She was not a citizen. She could not vote. She could not inherit her husband's property directly. She could not own land. She required a male guardian, called a kyrios, for nearly every legal matter. When her husband died, that role of guardian usually passed to her father, even if she was already a grown woman with children of her own. Her dowry, the property she had brought into the marriage, returned to her father's household. And then her father decided what would come next. He could choose to marry her off again, to another man of his choosing, even if she did not want to, because her dowry was valuable, and it could be deployed again for the father's benefit. In Athenian law, she was currency. The widow was a transferable asset. Wealthy older widows, past childbearing age, sometimes had more independence. Because their dowries had already passed to their adult children, there was less reason to recirculate them. But young widows, with no grown children, had no bargaining power. None. The system was not about cruelty, it was about property. Same pattern as in India. Different mechanism, same outcome. The widow was removed, either by death or by a new marriage. Either way, she stopped being a widow. A widow living independently, on her own terms, was a legal category that did not exist. Culture 3. Early modern Europe. Between 1450 and 1750, approximately 110,000 people were put on trial for witchcraft. Tens of thousands were executed. Roughly 80% of them were women. And among those women, a specific pattern. Most of them were widows, or older women without husbands, or women who lived alone. Why? because she had no male protector to vouch for her, because she had her own property, and someone wanted it, because she knew things other people in the village did not. She knew herbs, she knew midwifery, she knew the cycles of the body. She was the healer of her village, and that knowledge made her a threat. Male doctors and male priests wanted the authority over health that she had. Her property was tempting, and she had no husband to defend her in court, so she became a witch. The charges were almost always the same: causing sickness, failing crops, dead livestock, things that were going to happen in any medieval village anyway. But now they had a cause, conveniently. The last legal witch execution in Europe, a woman named Anna Goldie, happened in 1782. Culture 4, Imperial China. A different approach. The widow was not killed. She was honored, but honored in a very specific way. She was expected, for the rest of her life, never to remarry, no matter how young she was when her husband died. The government actively encouraged this, across multiple dynasties. The first Ming emperor, in 1368, decreed that families of chaste widows would be exempt from labor taxes, which meant a family could save money by keeping their daughter a widow, and if she stayed a widow long enough, the government would build an arch in her honor. Chastity arches. In Chinese, Zhenji Paifang, tall, carved, visible from miles away. A permanent public honor to the widow's virtue. But read the arch carefully. Her personal name was not on it, only her surname, or her husband's family name. She was honored, but not as herself, as a member of her husband's family. Before the Song dynasty, over centuries, only 92 Chinese women received official chastity awards. By the Ming dynasty, in the 14 and 1500s, the number had exploded into the thousands. By the Qing dynasty, by the 1800s, historians describe it as an assembly line. Why so many? Same reason as always. A widow who remarried under Yuan dynasty law could not take her own property with her. So she stayed too, because everything she owned was bound to a man who was dead. Many of these chastity arches still stand today across China, stone monuments to lives that ended when their husbands did. Visible, tall, nameless, forever. 4 cultures, 4 different mechanisms, 1 pattern. A widow who lived independently with her own property, her own knowledge, her own voice, was a problem the surrounding society did not want to solve. So each culture solved the problem differently. The outcome was almost always the same. She lost her property. She lost her place in society. She lost her voice. And often, she lost her name. Things are different now. In most parts of the world, modern widows have legal rights, property protections, the ability to remarry or to not remarry, as they choose. But the pattern is not fully gone. In many parts of the world today, widows still face property dispossession, social isolation, and economic vulnerability that men in the same position do not. The mechanisms have softened. The pattern has not fully ended. 4 cultures, 4 widows. 1 pattern that history mostly didn't bother to write down. That's the half of history nobody bothered to write down. And I'm going to keep telling it. Next video, how young some ancient brides really were. Subscribe so you don't miss it. I'm telling the stories nobody wrote down. See you in the next one.